Hello, friends. Welcome to the January episode of Scripting the Book. We are going to be talking about Wheel of Time, the book and the series. We're going to be focusing on book 1 and season 1, but we will have a little bit of chat about season 2 towards the end. I'm going to let my guest host, we have Shanon joining us, and I'll let Ben Pick, my co-host, introduce themselves. And Natalie's not here at the moment, but hopefully she will be able to join us soon. We're going to let Shanon, you start us off. Introduce yourself. Let the folks know where they can find you and what you do.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shanon. I write under the pen name of ST Huston, and I have a YouTube channel here under the pen name of ST Huston, where I do lots of writing sprints. And I also am part of the AuthorTube Writing Conference team, which we are going through applications right now and doing our review process. So we should hopefully have that notices going out in the next 2 months here to applicants. And I'm also part of the Self-Publishing Tips and Tricks podcast with Ben Pick from Running2Write down below, and Morgan Lee. And I also do tons of writing sprints on my channel. So I don't know. Oh, I said that already. No, what I wanted to talk about was a show I have coming up in February. So in February, I have a special show called Charm Chats and Happily Ever After Sprints, where I'm bringing on a romantasy or fantasy romantasy or fantasy romance author nearly every day. It's not going to be every day, but nearly every day to talk about fantasy romance, plays a fantasy romance theme game, and do a sprint. It's going to be lots of fun. So I hope to see you there.
Nice.
And I am Ben Pick. Every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors as Running2Write on YouTube. And tomorrow now, I will be talking all about how to portray time passing within a story.
Nice.
So, hope to see you there.
And I'm Nia, the Vixen of Fiction. You are here on my channel. I host writing and productivity sprints on Tuesday nights. I also stream on Twitch on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays in the middle of the day, so you can come hang out with me there. And I love to read and I write things. We have some friends. Hello, Rachel and Cool Gamer, hanging out in the chat with us as we talk about Wheel of Time. The first book is the one that we're going to be discussing. It's called Eye of the World. We're going to run through really quick first what everybody read this one, right? That we had no DNFs on the first book of Wheel of Time. Great. So 0 DNFs. Let's go. Dislike, neutral, like, and love. Is anybody a dislike on book 1?
No, but I did DNF it the first time I ever read it.
Okay, this is
I was like 14 or 15. So, and everyone kept telling me how great it was, and so I picked it back up again, and then I was glad I got through it.
Oh, good. So was it a dislike for you that first time through, or just didn't feel like it was your cup of tea?
It was just so slow because, I mean, that first chapter opens up and it's just no spoilers, so try not to do that. It just felt like it wasn't getting anywhere fast.
There you go. All right. So how about any neutrals? Likes? Love. I'm a like to love. So I'm between like and love. So let's go ahead and get into it. What are your thoughts on The Eye of the World, Wheel of Time's book 1? Trying to keep it no spoilers. If you're a fan out there or someone interested in reading it, I will say the Wheel of Time fandom is pretty good at letting you know when there's going to be spoilers and not. So I'm going to try and do the same. So if you're coming in and watching on the replay, we're going to do our best. So we were all like to love on this one. I will say for me, I really enjoyed the storytelling. And Robert Jordan does something that I really appreciate. He has a great combination of telling and showing, and he does his descriptions well enough that you don't feel lost in the description, but the descriptions really let you feel immersed into the story. So that's one thing that I find that he does really well, that it's sometimes hard to balance when you're doing an epic fantasy. Like if sometimes I find if you do too much of the embellishment, you kind of like get lost if the story is also really, really big. And his story is very big. There's a lot is thrown at you with the languages and all of the different things, the way that the whole magic system and the way that the world works. There are a lot of new words, so there's a lot to learn coming in. So the fact that he's able to balance that where it doesn't feel overwhelming is something that I really appreciate. So it's very good storyteller in that sense. So going in, I definitely appreciated that and just really enjoyed the storytelling. And we'll just round robin it. Shanon, you were a like love also. You want thoughts on why?
Once I got past that first chapter, because I had the enough to on that first chapter, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, I'm done. But yes, and in the storytelling, like you said, it's a really good balance between telling and showing, and he does give really good descriptions. But I think he leaves part of what I liked was that he leaves just enough that you can imagine it, the rest of it for yourself. So I think that's really important. And you do get a scope of something bigger, of a bigger world. And the book opens on a small village and it kind of stays there for a little bit. And but you get almost right away in those first few chapters, you get this scope of a bigger world through the stories that are told from other people. And you're like, oh wow, there's a big history to this. We're not stuck in this little town. There's definitely more that's going to be coming. So you know that stuff is going to be happening. And I always delight in names. So hearing some of the names right away, like when I first heard Moraine, I kind of thought about the Morrigan at that time. I did not know until I did more research on Irish mythology that you have the Aishi, or Aishi, I think maybe is how you say it. But the first part is AES, which is the same as that I don't know how you say it, the Aes Sedai. That's how I said it in my head, but I didn't know if that was right. So the Sedai is close to the she because she is Sidhe. So I was like, oh, he's pulling a lot from Celtic mythologies. And of course you do have like Lan. I thought of Lancelot, Arthur, so I love names. And that's a really big thing for me when I'm writing. My names always mean something. So I loved picking up all these little like clues everywhere that he pulled from histories himself, which kind of makes you wonder, okay, is this more like our world? Like, do they have like some of the same stories? Which that continues to build in the story building or the world building throughout the series. So yeah, but yeah, you get a lot of that in the first book. I like it.
Yeah, I agree. And you both mentioned that he was for both telling and showing with his descriptions, which I tend to find leads to a very verbose way of storytelling and kind of giving us too much information. And I mean, the whole series is 14 books long.
15.
What?
Right? I think it's 15, isn't it?
There might be a prequel, but it definitely stopped. The last official book is the 14th book of the series, so there might be a prequel series then.
I'm probably thinking about the prequel, New Spring or something like that.
Yeah, because Memory of Light is like the 14th book or whatever, and it is very long. There are entire books which I say people can skip over. When you get into the series, and this feels like a speed run of the entire Lord of the Rings series. So the Eye of the World is like all three books kind of shoved into one. And it's not, that's a very crude amalgamation of it, but that's how it feels to me. And it's kind of like Lord of the Rings mixed with our parts of our own history. So you have different cultures and races across Andor, which is the continent or whatever you want to call it in the Wheel of Time world. And you can see where Robert Jordan directly took cultures: Native Americans, Chinese, Japanese,
Irish.
Yeah, Irish, absolutely. And Norwegian, like every single, like you can see the flavors from our world they just sort of threw into Middle Earth is it's known here, Andor. And you sort of have kind of at its heart a very simple story that gets unnecessarily complicated because of all those additional details. So that's why I'm kind of like a like, definitely not a love, and kind of on the lower end of like.
Yeah,
it's very long, so that entire thing can be shortened up.
Very long.
Lord of the Rings, but longer.
Yeah, because I would say within book one, you really everything happens, and it almost is. And if once you read through it, because I don't want to spoil anything, you feel like, wow, you got a whole story. And then you find out, but that's not all. And it's like, oh, okay, buckle up. Here we go. For me, because I love a good epic fantasy and I love something that is going to continue on, I get very attached to characters. So the longer I get to play in their world and follow them along, even if I'm following them along through their whole life, that's something I actually enjoy. And I know that can be tedious for some people. So yeah, if you're going to get into it, that's what you're signing up for. I may have skipped over books. Like I read this quite a long time ago, and then things happened. Of course, I think everybody knows Robert Jordan passed away, and somewhere in the mix, I just kind of like dropped off from them. And then the books continued on with Brandon Sanderson. So at some point, I picked them up, and I know I have forgotten more things. It's that so big that I've forgotten more things than I remember. So when the series started up, I think a year before it started up, it got picked up, first of all, and then the buzz about it started, and so I started dipping back into some of the fandoms, and the things that they were talking about. It's just like if you hop into any fandom, like if you like something and then you hop into the fan, they're talking about things and you're just like, I don't even remember when did that even happen, who was that person. So it is that epic of a series. But I do remember reading the first book and just feeling like, oh, this is good. Okay, I enjoyed the ride, and then something about finding out that there was more actually made it better. Better for me. I was like, oh yay, there's going to be more. So knowing that I can at any point in time, and with this many books, literally at any point in time, I could grab a book and hop back in, and a lot of time could go by, but it didn't matter. You get used to your main core characters. And then there are more characters that get picked up as you go along, and you lose some characters along the way because it is a fantasy. you're gonna lose some characters along the way, and it's sad. But it's like this: you're going on this long journey. So take that however you feel about long storytelling.
And sorry, one thing about the Robert Jordan passing on to Brandon Sanderson. That was only the last 3 books. So I think it was originally going to be 2 books for the conclusion, which means that this series would end at 13. But then Brandon Sanderson sort of took the direction that Robert Jordan gave him and expanded into the 3 books for the conclusion.
Yeah.
So
and it's just
was able to close it up and finish out the
But it'd been perfect if it was 13.
Right.
Just because of
well, it's also that Robert Jordan kind of poured his heart and soul into this entire series, and I don't think that anything that happened in the last 3 books was against his vision. So it is still his series, even though Brandon Sanderson kind of put his own flavor and spin onto the conclusion to it. But everything, especially this book, everything is all Robert Jordan.
Yes, 100%. And we'll get into some more about this when we actually talk about the show. But when I was listening to one of the things that Robert Jordan, in one of his interviews, he was talking about the way that the story is told. He said it's kind of like the further away you are from the event, the more varying that the story becomes, the more different interpretations that the story becomes. And that's kind of how he felt about the Wheel of Time itself and the way that the story is told in this circular wheel type style versus the linear style where time is linear, that it can constantly repeat itself, but different every time. It could be things change and changes as different people tell the story. So I remember it was the first time around, genuinely an enjoyable read. Probably that first chapter is a little bit long, but it's also, for me, it's like that immersive, kind of like I'm getting into I read enough in fantasy that I prepare myself to just buckle in for the ride. So it's fine. It doesn't bother me unless it continues on. Like don't do that for half the book and we're good. So,
I would say that newer fantasy, they kind of avoid a lot of those things though in the beginning now.
Yeah, they really do. It's like everything happens immediately. Like first chapter stuff is happening.
Which there is something happening in the first chapter. It just takes so long to get to that point that you realize that there is something, that there's a sinister feel happening.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean it's intriguing. I will say it starts out with Rand and his dad. They're just walking, and they're getting ready to have this festival, the Beltane festival in the village, and they don't live exactly in the village, so they don't go to the village every day. So it's a
They're walking through the forest,
and this weird, mysterious thing is happening that we don't know. Like Rand feels like he's being followed. So it's a lot of that. And then you get into he's going to meet up with his friends. And then we get into the belt. So it does take a long time before you actually find out, okay, is something happening here? So yeah, there is that. Anybody have any other thoughts on the book before we move on to the movie or to the show, and then we'll start comparing, give our thoughts on the differences.
Okay.
Yeah, just one random thought is that there are a lot of very interesting Wheel of Time drinking games to go along with the book. Whenever somebody pulls their braid or whenever somebody's described in like a certain way. I'll see if I can find a good one and I'll post in the comments because they're varying degrees of quality, but there are some really
yeah. Nynaeve's temper.
She's constantly pulling on her braid.
Always. There's that pulling of the braid, and yeah. And also hello to Andy and Martin's here and Richard. Hello, guys. Ta-da. Let us move back over to let's talk about the show. Series 1. Anybody a dislike on Series 1? Neutral on Series 1.
Yeah.
Like on Series 1. I'm a like. Love on Series 1. There were too many things for it not to be a love. I will say when I did the first time I watched it, especially episode 1, just getting into the world, it was very exciting. It made more exciting if you're watching with people who are also very excited to see it. It kind of helps that. And I did kind of do like a watch party type thing where I wasn't participating in a fandom, but they were watching it. And so I watched on my own and then hopped in to see what everybody else thought. So it did kind of like hype up that excitement, but it was very exciting. I loved the look of it. And immediately, we'll get into changes later, but immediately there were things that were different, that were like blaringly different, but it was just fun to see the world come to life. So from episode 1, I was like, okay, I can get into this. And I watched it with my husband, and he had never read the book, and he was really liking it too. So I could see why things were done the way they're. It's a lot to take in for a newcomer, or for just a general audience. So trying to find that balance to what's going to make the readers happy and the audience happy with something so big. I think we were both able to enjoy it. So I was able to enjoy it, and my husband enjoyed it as someone who's just watching it like a fantasy show. So you guys were neutrals. What were your thoughts on this season?
Do you want to go first, Ben?
I can, certainly. So I know that there are specific points that they, and again, we're not going to spoilers, where they deferred from.
Oh, we can do short show spoilers. I had to get
but not book, but not the book. Yeah,
not the book spoilers. Just as long as it's a show. Show spoilers.
So they elevated the importance of more side characters within the core group across the show, and I know that leading into this, there was a lot of backlash in terms of those decisions. I had no problem with that. I thought it added a lot of new dimensions to those characters and the entire team as a whole. Going back to the whole, comparing this to Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings and all of these, it kind of felt like they did a lot of generic fantasy shows, and it didn't really feel like Wheel of Time. It felt like kind of imitations, or like the phrase I used before was a speed run of Lord of the Rings, where the Trollocs didn't really seem that terrifying, even as they're savaging down and running through amok. there is an entire scene which felt like the movie The Happening, where they go to a specific location and it's supposed to be really, really terrifying. But it's basically, the movie The Happening is like the trees are out to kill us. And it's just a whole lot of staring into open field, and you can hear the wind blowing, and then either something will happen, or some person might get infected or whatever, and they'll do something really crazy, or it'll just be an empty shot of a field where nothing actually happens. And I felt like that happened a lot when they are running through and trying to escape from that scenario. And then somehow the core group, after getting separated and coming out anywhere from like miles apart from each other, they all sort of come together. And I know the entire theme of or not the entire theme, but there's a plot point that happens frequently where there are these people called Taverin, which basically change or adjust how the wheel turns around themselves. But whenever I was reading the book and in the show, it kind of feels like that is just kind of an author saying like, oh, well, this really, really minuscule chance of something happening is going to be expected now. Like it feels like it's a way of working around extremely unlikely scenarios by just saying, oh, well, the wheel wields as the wheel turns, or whatever the phrase they use. So I felt like the show, it took certain liberties, and the liberties they took kind of watered down the character development and the plot itself.
So I also watched the show with my husband, who had never read the books, and he really liked it. I don't think they really, I don't know how you say the word. I always called it Taverin, the Tavernier or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically, the web weaves itself around these people. So occurrences and people are drawn by Tavernier or Tavern or whatever you call them. And my husband didn't get that. He was like, I don't understand that. So I had to break it down to him. So I do think there was a lot put into it that is not easily, it was not easily understood by the person who never read the books.
Right.
But then for them to change the things they did, that was integral, I thought, as part of the books. So it kind of worked against it in two ways, I think. And that's why I'm kind of a neutral on it. Because if you're watching it for the first time, it's great. You don't know all this stuff in the books, but there are things that are not explained. But then why put it in the books? Why not change that part instead of leaving it so ambiguous? Because there was a couple points. It was that and something else I can't remember that he was like, I don't understand that point either. What was that about? So we had to stop the show so I could explain it to him. But I did like the look of it. I did think, oh my gosh, what was it? The very first attack from the Trolloc, they were dancing and the one guy got stabbed from behind by a Trolloc. And I was like, oh, that's Game of Thrones. They're imitating Game of Thrones. I remember thinking that. And I was like, no, but the rest of it wasn't Game of Thrones. It's not that same gritty feel that Game of Thrones has. And I was like, this is not right. The tone is totally off here. I also didn't like that they did the fridge and the woman, or the woman in the fridge.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. And I was like,
that was
really?
my least favorite part of that first you give. Okay, we'll get into comparisons, but if I don't like the idea of giving someone a spouse, companion, sister, just to kill them off, just to make them brooding,
to develop their character.
There's other ways to develop character. Don't like it. That was probably my least favorite thing in episode 1, starting it out. I did like the actor did a great job. With
you could feel
that. Like, oh man, I just felt bad for him. I'm like, but he's a good actor. You can tell he's a good actor. You could have given him something else.
Yes, given to
did not have to bridge the woman. He would have killed it. Either without that. So that's probably the thing that I liked the least going into it. But the thing I loved the most going into it was the look of it. I love the village. I love the water scene where in the beginning when she's gonna Naimi pushes Egwene
into the rapids.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So the place where they shot this was spot on. Gorgeous, absolutely love the look of the place. And one of the things that I did appreciate about the show is that, and I don't think that everybody likes this, but I like my fantasy bright and light, and I want it's that way when it is a dark scene, and it can be dark and it can feel different. A lot of fantasy right now is very gray and gritty, or very
gritty,
And I'm like, that doesn't feel like fantasy. It's like everything is timed to be dystopian, but you're telling me that it's fantasy. So I appreciate that they actually let it be beautiful and the buildings be light and beautiful and the villages be pretty and lively and, all of that, so that we could have that contrast. So visually, I was very happy with the way it looked.
So Richard said something about where we can't stab anyone without saying copying Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And it's not that the stabbing, it was that fact that it was this happy dancing moment. And then all of a sudden it was not really, really quick, which is what Game of Thrones was known for.
Just like that.
Yep.
She's literally dancing with this guy and he gets it.
And there's been nothing negative really up to this point. I mean, that was like the first real like bad scene.
Yeah, sorry, I commented in there too, where it was just a moment of shock and awe, specifically for like a Game of Thrones. That is what Game of Thrones did, and then that is shown that same method of storytelling, visual storytelling, isn't repeated anywhere else in the season.
And it's not repeated in the books either. Yeah. It's not in the books like that.
Right.
So
yes. So yeah. I'm trying to think of what other things I really didn't like, but I don't want to focus on that first episode. There are things that I didn't like and that I really liked going throughout. So go ahead, Ben.
So there is one thing, and I guess it's kind of a good thing if you read the books. It's not really, but there is I have a note here. I don't have any context for it, so it is kind of a slight spoiler, but I'll try and steer clear of that. But it shows a major character being a dark friend, which is like the people who serve the evil Dark Lord, because that character did something that they cannot otherwise do. And that revealed that early. Like, if you know what's going on, you understand something about that character. And then from there on, all of their motivation just didn't make, like, if this is true, then they shouldn't be acting this way, or they shouldn't be doing this thing. And like, it feels like it was kind of a nod to readers who know the truth about this character, but at the same time, I feel like, well, then that unravels everything else that they're doing, because it kind of doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like with some of the things that were happening with the characters, I don't know how to put. I'm trying to figure out how the best way to put this. I don't know if this is part of the making it more palatable or easier to digest for non-book readers, because like Shanon was saying that she had to stop a part to explain. I don't remember what episode, but a couple times I did have to explain to my husband some of the things. Like I would look at him to see if he got that. And I said, yeah. He goes, oh yeah. He goes, I got that. He goes, I'm not sure exactly what's going on, but I just caught that was happening. I'm like, okay, good. But there were a couple of spots where I was like, oh, that's because and some of it is, I'm already ready to get to comparisons, but spoiler-ish. When you guys were reading the book, did anybody question who the Dragon Reborn was?
No.
They didn't really know. It was
kind of no, I don't think I did either.
Yeah, it was known up front, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, there was nothing that said, here's the Dragon Reborn, but you knew because of the way the story focused on things.
Okay, exactly. My point too. And there was a little bit more of a question as I was watching with my husband. Even I was like,
there's not mystery.
Like, I know where it is, but
yeah, it's a mystery. This is not part of the show. They're the story.
or to give another crude comparison to Rings of Power, because I keep drawing analogs to the world of Middle Earth. It's who is Sauron? Like it's something that shouldn't be in the show, but yet is core to its to the season with Wheel of Time. It's who is the Dragon Reborn. So you have
it played well though. I feel like for some audiences it played well. For me, I'm just like, but we know who
even if we didn't like the mystery of it. It was just kind of there to. It was a wasted potential.
It was a hook.
The best way. Yeah, it was a hook that never actually played out, because if you read the books, if you haven't read the books, then the plot thread of who is the Dragon Reborn doesn't really have any weight to it. You don't really care because they're all going the same way. There's no difference between them there are differences between the characters, but there isn't a difference in the end result of if this one person is the Dragon Reborn, then it changes the story.
I would say for my husband though, he liked it. He liked having the mystery
Yeah,
because
I
he liked
liked it.
mysteries.
Okay.
Yeah, he liked it. And I was like, that's not supposed to be a mystery.
It's not a mystery, but I'm like, I like that he was paying attention to, oh, did you see his eyes glow when he was cutting his back? And you know what I mean?
Yes,
Like,
actually, I do. I wrote he did that too with Perrin.
Mhm.
Yep. And like when Matt had the knife, the dagger, excuse me, when Matt had the dagger and the dagger is messing with him, and my husband's like, oh no, it's just the dagger doing it. But then when Moraine says anybody else who had that dagger, the dagger would have done them in way longer. So he's way stronger to have been able to, last this long under the control of the dagger. My husband's like, you know what I mean? Just like, this is a clue to something else going on. So even though he's not totally surprised at who the Dragon Reborn ends up being, it makes him more wonder, well, what's going on with these other characters? And and you see Nynaeve just in episode 4, which episode 4 happens to be my favorite because I think a lot of things happened that I enjoyed in episode 4, but when you see that was a good example of her raw power, that she's got all of this power, but she has no control over it. But she's literally, like they said, the most powerful channeler that they've seen in, so many years. But she's got no control over it. And so I thought that was a really, I really like that. And I like that Logain, the way that he was looked at her, because Logain is like convinced that he's like, I'm the dude. He sees her power and he's like, nope, I can't even touch that.
Yep.
It is not I. And it's not her either. But you know what I mean? That's how powerful they both are.
And my husband thought maybe Nynaeve was the Dragon Reborn from that episode.
Yep, exactly. So we see these moments where this plays well with the non-book reading audience, and I'm like, I get that. And I like the way that they chose to do the channeling, and I know that was Rosamund Pike. She made that decision because I think that a smoldering look doesn't play as well as visually the actors being able to do something. So there were changes that or things that were going on in the story that I think, okay, this makes sense, and I was able to go along with it. So it kept me at a like until the last episode. And then things were just like, I was like, I will say, you guys want to go ahead and get into comparisons? That way we can just start talking about some of these things that have changed. Because this is getting really hard, guys.
Yes.
It's getting really hard. So we are going to be full book spoilers. Most of the spoilers, we're not going to try and spoil the plot or anything that happens in the book, but we will spoil things as we're comparing them to the show, which we are full spoilers on the show. So there's just things that are easier to do, physically to show. And there were changes that were made that I thought, okay, that's a good change. There were changes that were made that I thought, I don't understand why they changed that, but it's fine. I can go like when they first leave the village, they're not leaving with who are they supposed to leave with? Tom, and they end up
Marilyn, who was in the show.
He's not even there until
till like episode 3.
Yeah,
and when he is in, it's not like it's really him. I mean, he's
right.
he is Aragorn.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I think that we were still able to get that whole, there's a gleeman and singing the songs, you know what I mean? So we're able to get them. We just getting things in different order.
Yeah.
And some things are happening with different people. And I'm like, I'm okay with it. I do wonder sometimes how would it have been if they'd have gone directly from the book. Most of the things, though, a lot of things I was just okay with them, the changes, because the story progressed along nicely until the last episode. But I will say part of the problem with making the changes that they decided to make early on would have been fine if we hadn't had a pandemic happen in the middle. And so then at the last 3 episodes, they made changes that they didn't have a choice. So then it just, at that point, it just felt like a lot. yeah, it just felt like too much. And I'm surprised that for episode 6 and 7, it's still, and this is why I had a lot of hope for episode 8, because when they're coming back and they're trying to pull it all back in, they lost one of the actors.
Yeah.
So the actor couldn't go with them into this important part. They couldn't go into the way, and it's just like, okay, and that you just have to roll with the punches on that.
Yeah.
But you're adding this change now onto the changes that they have decided to make. So now it just seems even bigger. And now you have this person who's going to be pretty much absent, who's kind of integral. Who's going to be absent. So everything has to change. And it's just like, if the little changes hadn't have been made early on, these changes that you can't help would not have felt as big as they did, especially in the last episode. It was like, the changes and the absences felt staggering by the last episode. And that was unfortunate. And I think Shannon and I were talking beforehand, we were watching this with our spouses, and my husband was like, that's it? When we were at the end of season 1, he's like, that's it? And he's like, it's like, yeah. Then I'm like, literally myself, like, yeah, this is, and he's like, what just happened?
I was like, yeah, but it's not right.
And I'm literally like, I don't know what just happened. Did Nynaeve just like not really burn out because she did that? Because I don't know. Or
did Egwene really bring her back?
Bring her back. And so I'm like, maybe she was like not really dead because she did the same thing in the cave in season 4, but I didn't have an explanation for it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know what just happened, and now we gotta wait.
Yep.
But he rewatched it with me too. He rewatched the first 6 episodes with me, and he enjoyed the rewatch just as much. So it still played well with the non-book reader audience. Because I just wanted to freshen up. So he's like, "You're not even sitting down to watch," and I'm like, "I already saw it, babe. I'm just just trying to like get the refreshers on what again." Yeah. But he was chilling. He just laid back and watched it like he was watching it the first time. So he enjoyed it just as much the second time through as he did the first time. Anybody else thoughts on the changes that were going on and comparing the world building, characters, any of it, execution?
Yeah. Well, so there were three changes there were a lot of changes that were made that were really good, I think, because it had to be adapted for the TV show. One thing that I really appreciated was that it was a more diverse cast than what you got in World of Time. And I also appreciated, at some points, they kind of built up the backstories of some of the characters a little bit more. But on the other hand, I do feel like the Wheel of Time series started out as more light and airy. You have these kids, they're, almost like how we are when we first move into adulthood. We have all this energy, we're ready to take on the world, and you get in adulthood, you're like, I'm tired. So that feels like that what happens throughout the series, because they come into dealing with real world problems and have to deal with all this stuff. But here, all the characters are pretty much given a backstory. So for Rand, like Matt comes from an abusive household with his dad's philandering, and Perrin has with his wife, and so you're given these negative backstories, which gives them a character wound, which is great in storytelling because it gives them something to grow from. But it automatically puts them in a position where they are not this fresh face like kid who has to learn how to be an adult and deal with these real world problems like I got from the books. So there's that. I kind of like it and I kind of don't. One thing I can say, the one big change I don't like, and I love that they're being more inclusive, but I don't like that they made the Dragon Reborn could be male or female. I am totally against that because I felt like all the prophecies made it clear it was a male. You had the Red Aja, even, they are always on the lookout for the Dragon Reborn. I mean, everything was built around that. And that was just a very big part of the the Wheel of Time series that I just felt like that shouldn't have changed. I know they were trying to be more inclusive. They could get rid of the prophecy of Rand having 2 wives. That would help.
Yeah.
3. Or 3 wives, sorry. 3. Yes, get rid of that part. But I just felt like Dragon Reborn, he was supposed to be a male, not either male or female. So, but to my husband who never read the books, it just felt fine to him. So
yeah, same. I that is one thing as I was watching, I kept thinking, but not really. The whole point is that if it is a male, because it makes them, but then that's another thing I just had to like take that out just while we're watching the show, toss that away.
And the last thing I had issue with the fact that it looked like Egwene either revived Nynaeve or she healed her from burning out, which is not a possibility.
Right. And yeah, that's why that's one thing that my husband and I were trying to just make sense of that. Like, did she not fully burn out, and was she doing the same thing with herself that she did back in the cave, or did Egwene actually do this thing? And he goes, "Is that possible?" And I'm like,
and they're like, "No." I was like, "That's not right."
So then he goes, "It must have been Nynaeve doing it to herself." Then I'm like, that would be more plausible, and especially as you get into season 4 or into season 2, I think episode 3 maybe. If you move along, you see a similar thing. So that, because we never get an explanation, so I'm still leaning because the other thing should be impossible. I'm still leaning towards it's just that Nynaeve has this weird power that she has no control over that can just do some freaky things. That makes a little bit more sense. Because I just feel like if Egwene could do that, if Egwene's not going to let go of that kind of ability, if Egwene can tap in and do that, like, first of all, it's not possible. But if she could, knowing Egwene is a go-getter, hungry for this. She's not gonna be like, I just touched that and I'm just gonna let it go. No, she's not. That's not who she is. Okay, Ben, we're gonna bogart this conversation.
No. This is fine. I don't really have anything to add because everything I really said said already in like the not really I was trying to avoid spoilers. So I don't really have much to add here. Where I felt like the missing the Tom Maryland character really kind of stands out for me because you have these characters who are supposed to have never really left Two Rivers, and now they're going across the continent through multiple different cultures, and they kind of really needed the Glee Man to get them there. And I feel like there could have been just a few chapters or a few tag away moments where he shows them how to play the flute, or he shows them how to basically pay their wares, pay their way across the continent, so that way they can stay in the inns and do whatever, which is what happens in the books. But it didn't happen here, so they kind of just rely on Matt to gamble and win, and then they just kind of don't have to worry about money as they're going across. And there are just so many changes from the book to the show that, like you said, are tiny details that by the time you get to the end, it doesn't feel like these are the same characters who they are in the book, but they're still making the same choices. They're still using the one power in a specific way that they have to, but it doesn't feel like those characters are there. It just feels like they're kind of moving the plot along in the show. And there were also plenty of, I know this is, well, whatever. Sorry, what I was going to say is that I know this is a complaint about Lord of the Rings, but I'm just going to say it here, where it just felt like there was a lot of walking and talking without anything happening. From the Tinkerers and the White Cloaks to...
You didn't like the Tinkerers?
I thought those scenes lasted way, way too long. There were entire scenes that just didn't need to be there. Like, we get the idea that they're working with the Tinkers. The Tinkers are pacifists, and then they meet with the White Cloaks. But it felt like there were just 3 episodes of them just wandering around with the Tinkers, finding out how, this life of a Tinker is so amazing. And then, sure enough, as soon as they needed to as soon as they wanted to shift to some kind of action scenes, then they kind of just dropped anything. And the entire conversation they had with the Tinkerers wasn't really world building. It wasn't really expanding on their characters. It was just kind of like a long pause while we try and wait for the next big thing to happen.
Yeah, true. It could have been a lot less, and I think it would have still came across the same, that there are these people who are pacifists who are traveling through. When it comes to those type of changes, because we got a whole episode on the warders and the warder Aes Sedai bond, and I loved that episode in and of itself. I just thought, we're getting this expansive thing. We don't get anything like this in the book, and anything that lets me learn a little bit more about the world, I love. However, we only had 8 episodes.
Yeah.
Oh, and it gets worse when you factor that they did the exact same plot beat in for an entire episode, more than an entire episode in season 2.
I
So
don't know.
yeah,
I feel the same. If it was a longer season, it would have been
I'm
nice.
like, beautiful, beautiful, nice, but
and that's something we don't see in the books.
Like
that is a cool addition to the show.
Seeing the political side too with the Aes Sedai when they're at the tower. I like that too. But
like, if you're going to add something that wasn't in the books, it should be important. It should be something cool. It should be something that expands on the world instead of just kind of walking along and kind of having a conversation that doesn't actually mean anything.
Yeah.
Like what Perrin and Egwene did that a lot.
I know.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, why?
I mean, I think it was.
And then they tried to throw in a love interest.
I know, and I thought that was weird.
I did not like that. I was like,
didn't
no,
like
I'm
that
glad
either.
that they squashed it in the end. I don't know what they were thinking. It shouldn't have been.
It's on TV. That's what they were thinking.
Yeah, but I'm glad that I'm glad when it all came out, it immediately got squashed. It's like, no, Perrin loved his wife. Him and Egwene are just friends. Maybe this protectiveness was like a sisterly type thing, but they made that clear, and then it was squashed and it was over. And we never have to revisit that again.
Yeah.
Why? No, not. We didn't need that. Trust me, Rand's gonna have enough love interest if they even go remotely close.
Yeah.
He's got enough women. We don't need the added turmoil. It's fine. No.
Yeah.
Let's see. Any other thoughts on world building or the characters? I mean,
this is kind of, well, whatever. How did you feel about the epilogue of the season, which was really just a prequel to show you what the world was like before?
Oh, with the Sanchin?
No, with the previous Dragon Reborn.
Oh,
where it was the future, where the past was really the future.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I kind of like those. I really liked the cold opens and the ending sequences. I don't know. I like those. That one with Luz Theron. I like that one.
Yeah. So they called him the Dragon Reborn, which he was not the Dragon Reborn. He was the dragon.
No. Well, I mean, it's a cycle, so that I don't really care too much about. But they had actual flying ships.
Yeah, that was really cool.
And the way that the buildings, I like the change when you see the buildings as they were beautiful and mystique, and then when they're ruins all grown over. Those are little things that I'm like, I don't know if my husband noticed, but I'm like, that's so kind of cool.
But at the same time, it's only been 1,000 years for since the last cycle, so there's no way that if they had technology like that, there wouldn't be remnants of it within the world. So like, that's something that somebody thought would be a really cool idea to throw in there without thinking about the implications.
I do feel like the book gave indications that there was that kind of stuff, like some of the ruins. So
that it was,
and I kind of saw it when Satan was just tainted. There was a lot of upheaval in the land, so a lot of this stuff could have been buried, and they don't have like archaeologists really going around digging this stuff up. So
no, but if let's say like our society just gets destroyed, 1,000 years from now, there will still be rust covered cars that if we're building a new home, like Tower Vallon is a huge city, so you're going to be excavating just to build a new tower or whatever, and you would absolutely come across something like that. Like,
what if they're ignoring? What if they're deliberately not messing with it?
I don't know. I mean, there are theories that the pyramids are much older than what they actually are, and that they're built by a advanced civilization. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but we look at that as old architecture. We think that was possible in our lifetimes, or not our lifetime, but in our history that we have recorded.
Yeah, but there's a big difference between building a really tall geometric shape versus building flying cars. I guarantee you, no matter what, nobody really thinks that there were flying cars in ancient Egypt.
No, probably not.
So
probably not.
And
but some people think that there were aliens.
10,000 years.
So
well,
that built
we don't need to get into that. But that's still the difference between 10,000 years and 1,000.
True, because it would be like what 2,000 to 4,000 for pyramids, depending. So,
yeah.
That's interesting, Ben. Why are you making me think this hard about this?
Because it's something that they added into the show that they just thought would be cool, and then they didn't think they think about any of the consequences and repercussions of adding something like that in, and
Yeah.
how that would affect the world. And I feel like that is a bigger problem across the show, where they included something and just didn't really
give
think
us a
about how it
visual.
would. Yeah.
Yeah, it plays off visually, giving us a visual idea, but in real world, their real world, how does that actually work? I mean, I get what you're saying.
There is magic in this world. You don't know if that magic destroyed it too completely.
Yeah,
because we're working off of our laws of physics. They
this
have
is true too. This is true too. Oh my goodness, we're gonna
Fair
have to
enough.
come back.
I'm going to
We're gonna
suspend
come
my
back after.
disbelief here.
I know.
And yeah, but the rule is that you can only suspend your disbelief for like one thing per cool thing that's added in. And my point is that, like, for all this, for what it added in, it didn't really add anything. It was just like, oh, hey, that's a cool moment. It didn't really change anything. It didn't adjust anything. It didn't, you know, build up the character of Luce
Handy for
Theron
the people
anymore.
who read the books.
Mhm.
Yeah, but there are so many middle fingers to people who read the books too across the show that, like,
True. Maybe they're trying to sweeten the pot. I don't know.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me see. Thank you, Margaret is also hanging out. Thank you, Margaret.
She's got her show starting on the hour for the Black Author Tuber Readathon.
That's right, which is awesome. Let me see. So these changes have a lot to do with execution, the way that the book comes across. So are we giving it a pass or fail, or Rafe was doing his own thing, so you're just kind of going with it? I'm kind of giving it, he was doing his own thing, so I'm just going with it.
Yeah, same.
That's fair.
Not really pass or fail, because it feels like Wheel of Time, but the differences you can tell very much.
And in terms of execution, I will say that a lot of the CGI looked kind of cheap, which I hoped would get better in season 2 when they get maybe a bigger budget, but it didn't really. So there was just a lot of very poorly dark lit scenes to kind of cover up bad CGI, which I'm now very, very aware of when I'm watching shows.
Yeah, I tried not to pay too much attention to CGI, because sometimes there are things that I think look like a video game, but other people are like, no, that looks cool, and I'm like, okay. So I'm like, maybe I don't know what I'm looking for when I look at it.
I mean,
I like costumes. I'm a person who I like costumes. So when I see the Trollocs and things like that in costume, I tend to prefer that than when I see what clearly looks like they're been CGI'd. And some of this happened in the last episode, where it was supposed to be this big, grand, epic battle with 10, I don't know, like 1,000, and it looked like 50 Trollocs coming after. It just didn't look like as bad as we're being told that it is. And so I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening with this last episode? Why is this happening? And just a lot of things. I know that they had to figure out what to do with the Matt character. So we're getting introduced. The horn came into play, and then we had, still the dagger, and I feel like my husband didn't really get it, but he was just kind of like going along with it.
Yeah.
Like, why are they digging up this thing while there's a battle is going on?
Yeah, and I was like, well, it's important for the next part.
Yeah, and then why are the women having to burn themselves? It was a lot. It was a lot, and I'm just like, because it didn't happen this way, I don't know how to explain what's going on, because I don't know. But there is an epic battle, and so yeah, here we are.
There was a battle.
Everybody was supposed to go into the Blythe, and they're not. So yeah, we're just rolling with it at this point. So I don't know. We'll see in season 2. That was me. I'm like, I guess we'll see what they're gonna do with this in season 2. So then we're gonna try not to spoil it, because Shanon has not seen season 2 yet. So what did you think of season 2? Coming off of where we leave off, what are your thoughts?
All of my complaints are exponentially worse. I feel like, at least with season 1, I can kind of see the plot thread that they were going to. And yes, it it is unfortunate that it didn't quite stick the landing. And obviously there's a lot going on behind the scenes with issues with either real world actors, real world problems, Panini or whatever we're still calling it, and filming and everything. So those are fully understandable. And yes, it wasn't the ending that we liked, but they still kind of got to a specific point with character arcs. Season 2, there are, I genuinely think like half the season could have been either severely shortened down or skipped entirely in terms of plot and character development.
I felt like because it didn't have the problems that they ran into halfway through in season 1, in some ways it was tighter. It felt like he was course correcting some of the things that happened at the end of season 1, and that and when I say he, I say Rafe, but it felt like, okay, he's like, okay, this is where we're going to go, and this is what we're going to do. And I felt like, okay, I see where we're going. You know what I mean? Like it was a straighter line to getting to that last battle. In some ways, there were again some things where I'm like, oh, we're spending a lot of time on this, when I feel like if we're going to have this next battle that's supposed to happen, we're spending a lot of time on things where I'm like, I wish that we'd be doing some of these other things that I know need to be happening. But the direction all seemed to be moving, and they did get the new actor in playing Matt, at Donald, who I thought seamlessly got hopped into that character, and you're going to believe that it's him. You're going to believe that it's Matt. I thought he did great. And we get introduced to some new characters that you'll know from the book. So that was exciting meeting them. And I thought that I think that the new actors coming in to play these new characters did a really good job. So I can see why we're getting this season 3 and why a lot of people were very excited. But I see I totally get what you're saying. Too, I would say just because it was a smoother ride, I thought it was a better season for that reason. But again, the last episode, Shannon, you're going to find some things that you're just going to be like,
yeah.
I don't know why. And they build up that, to me, they're building up really, really well. And and I don't know.
They brought it all up to a wrap. They need to wrap it up. So.
And they wrap some things up again. If we hadn't spent so much time on other things.
There's a lot of walking and talking. But I do want to say 2 things. So in season 2, teleportation is a real bad problem. There's a time gap between season 1 and season 2, which is 6 months. And it takes the characters a long time to get to certain locations. And then throughout the season, there's like maybe days that go by where they are doing the exact like reverse of that. And just kind of bouncing between episodes or within the same episode, they're crossing distances that they should not have been able to cross.
And they're not doing time properly, which makes particularly Elaine and Nynaeve's scene, what should have been 1 5-minute scene, spans the entire episode, making it seem incredibly awkward. Because you're like, why are they here in this same spot 3 scenes later? It's not. You can tell it was one scene and they spread it out through while everything is happening. Like literally you're seeing people going from here to there, getting places, up towers, down towers, around. And these 2 characters, it's a great character building moment, especially for Nynaeve with her power issues. It's great, but it's not great for an hour.
Yeah.
It's great for 5 minutes.
And then the other thing is that the one power is extremely inconsistent in the second season. Well, first season to second season, because we see these incredible, powerful moments, and then we see just really weird things. And when characters should be essentially out of power, they're able to do just feats of incredible strength. I'll say that. And I don't know, it just feels like there's a lot of inconsistency. And if people who use the one power are so strong, then they really don't need anyone else. Like going back to season 1, where you had the final battle, where you have just 5 women standing there and able to annihilate 10,000 Trollocs. I mean, what need is there to have people on the wall then defending it?
Why didn't you do that first? Okay.
Yeah.
Just get rid of most of them, and then if there's like a handful left, then the army but I digress. I did not like that last episode. But yeah, that does happen. That's not to say that there weren't some really cool callback things that did happen in the final episode in season 2. So if you start watching season 2 and then you enjoy it, there will be things that happen in the last episode that you're just going to be like, yes, and there was something in this final episode that that's coming as a book reader, and you're like, no, because it's literally my family was like, what are you doing in there? I'm like, sorry, had a moment. So it's not all bad. It's just that the things that were not great were just really like smack your head. But the things that were really cool were really cool. So it's that last episode's going to be a mixed bag again. But the build up, the linear story, the way that the story is told it's more concise. So I am looking forward to season 3.
Cool. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Cool. So, oh my gosh, I think we did it, guys. We'll go into our best and worst changes.
And I think I kind of covered those when I was comparing the two of them.
Yeah. Which one was your favorite?
My favorite. My favorite change is that they actually showed the magic. Because it was hard to do that from page to screen, and I like seeing it.
Yeah, my favorite change is definitely the idea to have them doing these type of things to do. I really like visually being able to do that. I know that was a mixed bag for some people because that's a significant change that's going to carry throughout the series. But visually, I enjoy seeing it, and I like seeing what the actors do with that. So for me, that was a plus. I love seeing the diversity in it. I think that was one of the ones that you had pointed out earlier too, Shanon. And I did. I'm on the fence on whether it's a good change or a bad change, but I did like seeing more of the politics and more of the backstory of the warders. Unfortunately, it was at the expense of seeing other things. So that one was yay, and also womp womp because of time-wise, only limited episodes. How about you, Ben? You have any favorites and least favorites on the changes?
Yeah, for my favorites, I definitely think that the elevating of Nynaeve and Egwene. Yeah, Egwene?
I think it's right this first time.
There's a lot of names that are very similar, and there's a character that gets introduced in the second season, and I'm definitely going to confuse the two of them. But either way, in terms of their names, but I really like that they elevated their importance to the story because they become these incredible characters as across the series. And this shows that they already had that initial spark. And I think it's really cool to have incorporated them that way because it makes their characters a lot stronger and a lot more important as we watch them grow and evolve across the season. Worst change kind of evolving, though, is just love story with Perrin and Egwene. A lot of the just walking and talking scenes, again, with the Tinkerers, I just didn't, nothing they said there felt like it added to their character development.
I say the worst change I didn't say was for me is the woman in the fridge.
The fridge.
That's fair.
Perrin.
But I'm trying to remember because I thought in the book he did have a wife who no, not at all. That entire thing was made up.
They were not married. He was not married.
All right, and I Mandela effect that because I thought that because I thought that he did actually kill someone in the first.
He kills someone after he gets the whole wolf thing going with Elias, and he kills someone, and then he feels that guilt from killing them. But he starts off as just a happy-go-lucky kind of kid in the beginning.
No. Well, that is a very bad change. You're Shanon. Thank you. I'm changing my answer.
She came out of nowhere. I'm like, you're gonna give her this wife, and then within minutes, he's the one
that kills her.
That kills her, and it's just like,
and their unborn child.
Yeah. Which is hinted at very strongly. Don't like it. Do not want.
Yeah. I'm changing my answer. So that is also my worst change. Thank you, Shanon.
All right, let's go into final thoughts, guys.
I think I feel like you. I have not watched season 2. Listening to you guys, I feel like I probably still will give it a chance and watch it. So even though I'm kind of neutral about it, I still like seeing Robert Jordan's work come to life.
Yeah.
I would say if you like the first book, definitely give the series a try. I think that it goes to some incredible places by book 14. There are definitely places where it loses its way, but I am a huge fan of the series. I think that they had monumental shoes to fill with the show. I don't know that it necessarily held up those expectations, but they are growing and getting more accustomed to those characters. So maybe season 3 will really hit it for me, and they'll be able to capture my like strong interest and love for the show or for the books within the show.
Yeah, my final thoughts on this are going to be the acting is so good. Even when they're given very little, these actors are pulling stuff out, and it's like I believe that they are these characters, and I've been dotting in the Wheel of Time fandom here and there. I do like doing the watch parties, particularly if you're enjoying the show or you want to go in with a positive a group that's going to be on the positive side of, they're honest about the things that they don't like, but they're very excited about the show. They're very excited about the books. They're the Dusty Wheel. They're a very, very open, welcoming community. So if you have questions, they are fantastic. They will answer your questions. So that's usually where I go when I just want to hang out with people who want to talk about the show and knowing that they're not going to be really negative or the negativity is just out the door, but they are critical about things that they don't like, if that makes sense. So shout out to the Dusty Wheel there. I found them to be very, very fun and enjoyable group to just enjoy the show with. And so I've been able to really just sit back, relax, and have fun with it. I laugh at the things that they laugh at and get to just nitpick at the things like, why did they change this? And kind of just like roll with it, and I'm really able to enjoy it. So there are communities out there if you're looking for people to watch and hang out with and enjoy it, or you have questions, like if you're not a book reader and you just started watching, you're like, I have no idea what this is about. They're a really great place where you can go to get some of those questions answered. And they're very good about spoiling and not spoiling things. So if you don't want those spoilers, they will help you out. So yeah, I enjoyed it. From before it premiered, season 1 premiered, I was able to get really excited, getting to hear some of the interviews with the actors, getting to hear them start reading the books. And the ones who are like, no, I've never read this, but now I'm like, some of them are in it now. They're like, I'm reading the whole thing, and just watching other people become fans of the books from the show has been a lot of fun to do. So those are my final thoughts. Totally worth it. I'm a fan of the show. Do I think it's perfect? Not at all, but it's been enjoyable on a whole. It's been a more enjoyable experience than not. So anything else, guys? All right. Well, thank you so much, Shanon, for joining us. You're very welcome. Coming up, stay tuned. We believe we have a pick for February. We just have to confirm some dates, but it looks like we're going to do, what are we going to do?
The Pursuit of Happiness.
Yes, The Pursuit of Happiness. So come join us for that in February. It'll be one of the middle Sundays in the month. So we'd like to see you there. I'm going to let my guest host and my fabulous co-host give their outros and let you know where you can find them at next, because they're both here on YouTube and they have some fabulous channels. So Shanon, we'll start it with you.
I'm Shanon. I write under the pen name of ST Huston and have a YouTube channel under the name of ST Huston. And actually, I am going to be joining Margaret on her channel. I'm part of that cast there once we finish up here. So if you want to hop over to Margaret Pinard, we are talking about the Black Author Trooper Readathon, and we are still looking for people to sign up to help support Black Author Troopers here on YouTube. So,
And that would be just right corner. See you there after the Wheel of Time finishes.
Yep.
Okay,
And
Ben.
I'm Ben Pick. You can find me on Writing to Write on YouTube. I'm coming out with my 3rd book in my series, which should be out mid-March. I have a deadline. I'm trying to hit a March 7th deadline to get it in for Awesome Con, which I am now a vendor for. And yeah, it's going to be awesome. They have an artist alley, so an author's lane within their artist alley. So I'll be a vendor there. And if you're in the DC area, the weekend of March 8th through 11th or whatever, 8th through 10th, I hope to see you there. So I will cut myself off and go see Margaret Bernard's stream after this.
All right. Excellent. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Hang out in the AuthorTube community. There's a lot of wonderful people. These being 2 of them right here. We have a great time. We talk about all kinds of things, mostly books, but we do talk about other things as well. So we look forward to seeing you around. Thank you guys so much again for joining us. And we're going to say goodbye with a little Loki.
Bye.
Bye.